Welcome to Life Stories, where one letter, one betrayal, and one heartbeat away from death changed everything. Imagine waking up in a hospital, unable to move, and hearing your parents tell the doctors you're not really their child and that they owe you nothing. That's where her story begins. But what follows isn't just about survival, it's about rewriting a legacy built on lies and uncovering a truth so powerful it shakes the very foundation of what we call family. This isn't just a story about abandonment. It's about resilience, chosen love, and the fire it takes to stand alone and then decide not to anymore. Stay with us. What you're about to hear might just change the way you define family. Now, let's begin. My name is Sienna Blake. I'm 28 years old, founder of one of the fastest growing AI startups in the Northeast. I live in a renovated Victorian house in Portland, Maine, with stained glass windows that throw colored light across the hardwood floors at dawn. From the outside, everything looks pristine, curated even. That's the thing about perfection. It's almost always hiding rot. What no one sees, what the photos never show, is that last year I died. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, medically, flatlined. The doctors told my parents there was a less than 5% chance I'd survive the night. Their response wasn't shock or grief, it was a shrug. "She's not really our daughter," my mother told the neurologist. "We owe her nothing." Then they left. That's where most stories end, with the betrayal. But mine began there, because what they didn't count on was that I'd live. Growing up, I was the dutiful daughter, straight A student, quiet, polished. My younger sister Madison had the kind of fiery, chaotic energy that demanded attention. I remember being 5 years old when she knocked over a vase. I instinctively started cleaning up the glass. When our mom stormed in, I said it was my fault. I didn't even think about it. That's how ingrained it was, to absorb blame as a form of survival. My reward? A pat on the head and overhearing my mother on the phone later that night. Sienna's just naturally compliant. Not like Madison. Madison has spirit. Spirit. That was the word they used to justify everything. Her tantrums, her defiance, her cruelty. When I worked quietly, I was reliable. When she half finished an art project, it was brilliant. Madison got the bigger room. Madison chose the restaurant. Madison's C+ in chemistry warranted a cake. My early acceptance into MIT got a nod and a "don't let it go to your head." It wasn't until I was 12 that I understood why. I'd gone downstairs for water late one night and heard my parents arguing in the kitchen. "You've always favored Madison," my mother said. "It's like you're overcompensating because Sienna's not yours." "She's not yours either, Karen," my father replied flatly. We agreed never to treat her differently. I stood there barefoot on the hardwood, glass of water trembling in my hands, the world tilting. The next morning I confronted them. "I know I'm adopted," I said. My mother didn't flinch, she just smiled. "Don't be ridiculous. You must have dreamt that." Then she passed me the butter as if nothing had happened. They never admitted it, never explained. Instead, they made me question my sanity for years. But that night etched itself into my bones like frostbite, quiet and irreversible. Only Nana Evelyn ever acknowledged my reality. Every summer, I escaped to her ivy-covered house in the West End of Portland. She smelled like cinnamon and old books, and when I asked questions, she answered with half-truths wrapped in warmth. "You have your mother's eyes," she told me once. I thought she meant Karen. Now I know she didn't. When I graduated MIT and launched my company, my parents were there at the ceremony. They smiled for photos, accepted congratulations, but their eyes always told the truth. They looked at me like a performance, polished, impressive, but never beloved. When Madison got into med school, they threw a backyard party with string lights and catered oysters. When my company was featured in Forbes, they sent a thumbs-up emoji. 3 years ago, everything snapped. We were at Thanksgiving dinner. I'd just closed a major funding round for a diagnostic AI tool. Nana Evelyn beamed. "I always knew Sienna would change the world," she said. "She's always been desperate to prove herself," my mother replied, sipping wine. "It's common with adopted kids." The air went still. "Wait, what?" Madison's fork clattered against her plate. "Adopted?" "She knows," Karen said. "She's known since she was 12. Honestly, I don't know why we're even talking about this." I stood up. You've denied it my entire life, gaslit me into thinking I imagined it. My father gave a tired sigh. We did what we thought was best. Children need stability. No, I said. Children need love. I left that night. I didn't look back. Nana Evelyn died 6 months later, peacefully in her sleep. I was in San Francisco on business. My parents didn't call. I found out through her lawyer. She'd left me everything: the house, the estate, even a sealed envelope marked for Sienna when the time is right. Then the accident happened. It was late. Rain smeared the windshield like watercolor. I was driving home from the office, tired, wired. The other car ran a red light. I remember headlights, the sound of metal grinding against metal, the shuddering silence afterward. I woke up to voices I couldn't place and a body that wouldn't move. I was trapped inside myself, aware but unreachable. I heard the doctor say they needed next of kin. I heard someone say her parents are on the way. Then I heard the door open, and I heard my mother say, "She's not our real daughter. We owe her nothing. They left me." Again, only this time I was hooked up to machines, bleeding into my own brain. I should have died. But instead, I woke up, and when I did, I learned the truth, not just about my adoption, but about what they tried to do after I slipped into a coma. The estate, the conservatorship, the lies. And I wrote a letter, not to win, not to destroy, but to burn down every illusion they had ever built and free myself from the ashes. What would you do if your family abandoned you not once, but twice? First emotionally, then at death's door? Can forgiveness ever coexist with justice? The day they returned to my grandmother's house to claim what they thought was rightfully theirs, they found something else waiting on the table. My letter. And that's where everything began to unravel. The locks had already been changed. Nana Evelyn's house, the one my parents once referred to as that dusty old place, now stood silent and watchful, its stained glass casting fractured light across the dining room floor. On the polished mahogany table sat a single envelope with their names written in my grandmother's handwriting, carefully mimicked from an old birthday card by James, her lawyer. Inside was my letter, my truth. At exactly 2 or 3 p.m., a silver Mercedes rolled into the gravel driveway. Through the remote surveillance feed, I watched from Harper's apartment as my parents stepped out, dressed in calculated grief. Karen adjusted her sunglasses like armor. Douglas checked his watch twice. Madison followed a few steps behind, slower, less certain. She hadn't spoken to me since Thanksgiving 3 years ago, and I didn't know if she knew what they'd done in that hospital room. What I did know was that I wasn't the same girl they thought they could dismiss anymore, and they were about to find out just how much I remembered and how much I'd rebuilt. They struggled with the front door until the locksmith arrived. I paid him in advance. Let them feel helpless for once. When they finally stepped inside, Karen made a beeline for the crystal vase on the entryway table. "This would look perfect in our foyer," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "We're here for family heirlooms, not to shop," Madison said quietly. "Don't be naive," Douglas muttered. "She's not going to recover. The court will hand over guardianship, and all of this will be ours anyway." I felt Harper's hand tighten on my shoulder as I clenched my jaw. The casual cruelty of their voices, so calm, so rehearsed, was harder to hear than the initial abandonment. Somehow it cut deeper. Then they reached the dining room. "What's this?" Douglas picked up the envelope. He tore it open without hesitation. Karen leaned in to read over his shoulder. Her smile faltered. Her hands dropped. Her body stiffened like someone realizing they'd stepped into a trap too late to retreat. He read silently for a moment, face tightening with each line. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Outrageous. Lies and manipulations." Madison reached out. "What is it?" "Nothing you need to worry about," Karen said quickly, trying to reclaim control, to tuck the letter back into the envelope like stuffing the truth into a drawer. But Madison wasn't the same little sister anymore either. She took the letter and read it, every word. Then she looked up, pale and silent. "You told the hospital she wasn't your daughter?" Karen tried. "We were in shock. You said you owed her nothing." Douglas stepped in. "The adoption was never formalized. It was a private agreement. Evelyn coerced us into it." Madison's voice broke. "She was 12 when she found out." 12. And you made her think she was crazy for knowing. You gaslit her for years. I thought she was just, I don't know, needy. But she wasn't. She was alone. There was a beat of silence. Then Madison pulled out her phone, typed in the URL I had included at the bottom of the letter, and pressed play. For 3.5 minutes, the house was filled with the audio from the hospital's security footage. Their voices, crystal clear. Their faces unreadable as they said, "She's not really our daughter. We owe her nothing." Karen turned pale. "This has been edited." "No," Madison whispered. "No, it hasn't. I know that tone. I've heard it my whole life." Douglas looked like a man cornered by his own legacy. "We need to call Gerald, our attorney. We'll claim duress. Say she manipulated the hospital staff." "That's what you care about?" Madison asked. "Winning? Not what you did? Not that your daughter nearly died?" "I don't owe her anything," Karen said, voice sharp and shaking. And just like that, the line was drawn. Even from miles away, watching through a screen, I could feel it, the final split. Madison's eyes, the way she pulled the documents closer to her chest, the way her shoulders squared. She didn't say she would defend me. She didn't have to. That night, I lay awake in Harper's guest room, surrounded by legal folders, medications, and the smell of peppermint tea. I'd expected rage, satisfaction, some sense of finality. Instead, I felt something heavier, grief. Not because I'd lost them long ago, but because a small, desperate part of me had still hoped they might surprise me. That when faced with the truth, they might flinch. But they didn't. They doubled down. The next morning, Madison texted, "We need to talk, please." When I arrived at the cafe on Congress Street, she was already there, by clutching a paper cup like it might anchor her to the moment. Her eyes went to the scar just above my eyebrow, still healing. "They said you'd be in a wheelchair." "I'm not," I said flatly. She nodded. "I read the whole letter. I saw the footage. I didn't know, Sienna. I didn't know it was like that." "I believe you," I said, though my voice was brittle around the edges. "I should have seen it. All those years. They always made it sound like you were the one trying too hard, like they had to manage you." Her eyes brimmed, but she didn't cry. I let it happen. There it was. The real twist. Not the footage, not the inheritance battle, but this. The slow unraveling of someone I thought was lost to them, my sister, my almost sister, choosing me instead. Still, I hesitated. "Do you want to help me because you feel guilty or because you finally see it?" She answered without flinching. "Both, and I'm okay sitting in that discomfort." I believed her again. Have you ever realized someone you trusted was never really on your side, only to have them come back and ask for a second chance? Would you take it? Madison wasn't the only one with something to confess, because inside the sealed envelope from Nana Evelyn, there was a second letter, and what it revealed could change everything. The second letter wasn't meant for lawyers or probate judges or bitter parental confrontations. It wasn't even meant to settle a legal dispute. It was meant for me. Tucked behind the estate documents and adoption certificates in that heavy envelope was a small, cream-colored note sealed with red wax. My name was written across the front in Nana Evelyn's delicate cursive. Just my first name this time, not Miss Blake. Just Sienna. I didn't open it right away. Not when I was still rebuilding my voice, or learning how to walk again, or writing the letter that would burn down the illusions of an entire family. I waited, because some truths deserve silence around them. Because part of me was afraid that whatever was in it might undo everything I'd stitched back together. It was the night after the cafe meeting with Madison that I finally opened it. Rain pressed against the windows of Nana's house like fingers tapping from another world. I lit one of her old candles, clove and fig, and curled up in the armchair by the fireplace, the house creaking softly like it remembered us both. "My dearest girl," it began. "If you're reading this, then I've failed in one very important promise, to tell you the truth before it's too late. And for that, I ask your forgiveness. What I'm about to share may feel like betrayal, but I hope in time it will feel like freedom." My breath caught. I read on. "Your mother, your biological mother, wasn't Caroline Jameson. That was a story I told to protect her memory. Your real mother was me." The room tilted. My heart stuttered. I blinked, then read the line again. Yes, I was the one who gave birth to you. I was 39, recently widowed, and terrified. The idea of raising a child alone at that age, in that era, was unthinkable. So I made a choice. A cowardly one, perhaps. I asked my son Douglas and his wife Karen to raise you as their own. I thought keeping you in the family would spare us all shame. I told myself I would always be nearby, that I could still love you without the world knowing who you really were to me. But they never loved you like they should have. And I watched. I watched as they grew colder, as they favored Madison, as you folded yourself smaller and smaller to try and earn scraps of affection. I should have taken you back. I should have claimed you as mine. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. I told myself I was protecting you from scandal, from whispers. But in truth, I was protecting myself from guilt. I pressed the letter to my chest. My pulse thundered. Nana Evelyn, my grandmother, my confidant, was also my mother. The one person who had truly seen me, loved me, believed in me. And she had been carrying this secret all my life. The rest of the letter was softer. Memories of my first steps, my first fever, how she would sneak into my room after my so-called parents had gone to bed and rub my back until I fell asleep, how she'd kept every drawing I'd made, even the ones Karen discarded. I loved you before you ever knew my name, she wrote, and I will love you long after you've forgotten mine. I sat there for hours, letting the truth wash over me in quiet waves. It didn't undo the abandonment or the pain, but it reframed everything. I had not been unwanted, I had been hidden. And though that hurt in its own way, it was a wound laced with love, not rejection. I didn't tell Madison right away. Some truths are private even when they're public. But over time, I let pieces slip through. I showed her the letter. She cried harder than I did. They never deserved you, she said. But she did. She always did. That spring, Madison moved into the east wing of the house. It was tentative at first. 2 women raised under the same roof, but with wildly different stories of what that roof meant. We fought about dishes and guest lists and who got the better shower pressure. But slowly, laughter filled the halls again. Not the hollow kind that performs for company. The kind that cracks open years of silence and makes something bloom in the wreckage. Harper came by every Sunday, always bringing something new, a bottle of wine, a friend from the tech world, a rogue puppy from the rescue she supported. Zoe Ramirez, the nurse who stayed when my family left, became a constant too. Her quiet kindness anchored me when I felt unmoored. Even James, our family's lawyer, started showing up just to play chess and read poetry aloud in the parlor. We were misfits, all of us, and yet somehow we fit. Meanwhile, the final legal ruling came in. My adoption had been legitimate, the will ironclad. Karen and Douglas lost everything they tried to steal. They left Maine shortly after the court decision, their social standing in tatters. They didn't say goodbye. I didn't expect them to. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt released. There is a strange peace that comes when you stop expecting people to be anything more than what they've always been. I stopped hoping for apologies. I stopped chasing closure, and I started living. On the 1-year anniversary of the accident, I held a dinner party in my dining room. The stained glass windows caught the last light of evening, casting halos of color on everyone's faces. Harper made a toast. Zoe brought dessert. Madison slipped her hand into mine under the table. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I looked around the table. These people had shown up, not just when it was convenient, but when it was brutal. When I was broken, they were not bound to me by blood, but by something deeper, choice. As the candles burned low and laughter danced the walls, I heard her voice again. Nana Evelyn. I loved you before you knew my name. I believed her. And somehow that made all the difference. How did this story make you feel? Which moment stayed with you the most? Comment 100 if this story touched your heart. Tell us which country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with a friend who believes in the power of chosen family. Thank you for watching Life Stories.